The lawyer's voice echoed in the sterile conference room. To my son Bruce, I leave my entire real estate portfolio. My stomach dropped. 10 years of sweat equity, late-night repairs, and tenant calls flashed before my eyes. To my daughter Michaela, I leave the property at 247 Maple Street. The old shack. The place we'd called a teardown since I was 12. I gripped the ring of master keys in my purse, keys I'd collected over a decade of managing every building, every tenant, every emergency. My face went numb as Mum smiled at me like I should be grateful. Bruce smirked from across the mahogany table, already planning his victory lap. I didn't argue. Not there. Not in front of the lawyers and witnesses. Instead, I slid those keys deeper into my purse and pulled out my phone. Under the table, I texted myself a single line. Everything we built, prove it. The meeting continued around me, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was calculating 10 years of receipts, emails, bank transfers, and sweat equity. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. The lawyer droned on about tax implications and transfer procedures while I mentally cataloged every improvement I'd personally funded, every weekend I'd spent fixing their empire. Back home, I spread everything across my dining table. Binders full of rent rolls, repair receipts, and capital expenditure logs covered every surface. Photos of me patching roofs, painting hallways, and signing leases stared back at me. Each image was time-stamped proof of my decade in the trenches. I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd been updating for years. Every dollar I'd invested, every repair I'd funded, every improvement I'd managed. The numbers were staggering. $127,000 in capital contributions across 6 properties. Then I found it. The email that made my hands shake. From Mom, dated 3 years ago. Michaela, don't worry about the buy-ins. We'll settle up after the 3rd refinance. Your contributions won't be forgotten. I screenshot that email and saved it to a new folder labeled Evidence. The operating manual I'd written sat open beside me. 300 pages of procedures, vendor contacts, and maintenance schedules. Everything they'd need to keep the empire running. Everything they didn't know how to do without me. I poured another coffee and kept digging. By sunrise, I had a timeline that would make any lawyer weep with joy. Every transaction cross-referenced with bank statements and contractor invoices, building an unshakable foundation for what came next. That first night at Maple Street was brutal. Wind whistled through gaps in the siding, and something scurried in the walls. I lay on an air mattress, staring at water stains on the ceiling I'd helped create my inheritance budget for years ago. My phone buzzed. Bruce's Instagram story. Champagne glasses clinking on the lakefront balcony I'd personally renovated 2 summers ago. The balcony where I'd spent 3 weekends installing railings and staining wood while he was at the beach. The metallic taste of betrayal filled my mouth. But then I remembered something that made me sit up straight. In all the chaos of building our empire, I'd formed a dormant LLC for our 2nd phase of expansion, Harbor Oak Management. I grabbed my laptop and logged into the state business portal. There it was, still active and in good standing, registered solely in my name. I owned the brand guidelines, the website domain, and all the maintenance workflows we'd developed. A raccoon thumped across the roof above me, but I was smiling now. Harbor Oak Management wasn't just a shell company anymore. It was about to become my sword and shield. I had work to do. The same kind of work I'd been doing for free while they collected the profits and took the credit. Dawn broke gray and cold, but I was already at my laptop. Harbor Oak Management had been sleeping for 3 years, but every trademark, service mark, and intellectual property registration was still mine. I called the business registrar to confirm. Everything was bulletproof. The phone rang before I could celebrate. An unknown number with a nervous voice. Miss Michaela? This is Enrique Clark from First National. We have some concerns about the Riverside mixed-use property. My pulse quickened. What kind of concerns? Insurance certificates expired last month. Occupancy dropped below the loan covenant threshold. We've left messages for Bruce, but... His voice trailed off diplomatically. I pulled up my files. The Riverside building, I'd managed it for 4 years, knew every tenant, every lease term, every compliance requirement. I have all the compliance templates, I said. I could send them over this afternoon. Actually, Tom's voice dropped to a whisper, would you consider serving as interim property manager? Off the record just to stabilize things? We're getting nervous about our position. I stared out the window at the peeling paint on Maple Street. I'll think about it. But I was already thinking much bigger than interim management. This was the opening I'd been waiting for without even realizing it. The drive to First National felt like going into battle. Enrique Clark met me in a sterile conference room, files spread across the table like evidence at a crime scene. The insurance lapsed 3 weeks ago. Occupancy is at 68%, but the loan requires 75%. I opened my Harbor Oak folder, the compliance packet I'd perfected over years of managing Bruce and Mum's properties. Current certificates of insurance, tenant estoppel letters, maintenance schedules, emergency contact lists, everything organized in color-coded tabs. Tom's shoulders relaxed as he flipped through the binders. This is exactly what we need. Bruce sent us a handwritten note saying he'd figure it out soon. The occupancy issue is fixable, I said, pulling up lease files on my laptop. 3 units are ready for move-in, but they need final inspections. I can have them rented within 2 weeks. Enrique leaned forward. How soon can you start? I need a property management agreement and weekly payment terms. My company, Harbor Oak Management, operates on net 15 payment cycles. He nodded eagerly. Draw up the paperwork. We'll approve anything reasonable to protect our position. I shook his hand, already planning my next move. 1 building down, 5 to go. The empire they'd stolen was about to become the foundation of my own success. Mum's kitchen hadn't changed in 20 years. Same floral wallpaper, same creaky table where we'd planned our real estate empire over countless Sunday dinners. Now it felt like enemy territory. It's done, Michaela. Don't be dramatic. She didn't even look up from her crossword puzzle. I sat down across from her and opened my folder. Did you know the Riverside building is in loan default? Insurance expired? Occupancy below covenant requirements? Her pen stopped moving. Bruce is handling that. Bruce doesn't return the bank's calls. I slid a printed email across the table. Remember this? Your promise to settle up my $42,000 in capital injections after the 3rd refinance? She finally looked up, blinking like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. Those were family contributions. You can't put a price on family. The bank can put a price on covenant violations. They're considering foreclosure proceedings. Her face went pale. You're exaggerating. I pulled out my phone and showed her Enrique Clark's email from that morning. They asked me to stabilize the property as interim manager. Guess who has the only complete compliance files? The crossword puzzle slid to the floor as her hands started shaking. The same hands that had signed my name to loan documents without asking permission. The Riverside mixed-use building was worse than I'd expected. Broken mailboxes, flickering hallway lights, and an elevator with an out-of-order sign that looked months old. The kind of deferred maintenance that scared good tenants away. Chelsea Rodriguez from the corner bakery met me at her door. Are you the new manager? Bruce told us someone would fix the heat eventually. I looked at her lease, a handwritten addendum that made me cringe. No legal descriptions, no notice requirements, no rent escalation clauses. It wouldn't hold up in court if challenged. I'm here to fix everything, I said, starting with your heating system. I spent the morning photographing violations and calling vendors. The HVAC company I'd used for years picked up on the first ring. Michaela, we heard you were out. Bruce told us to stop returning your calls. I'm back in, I said. New company, same quality standards. Can you get someone over to Riverside today? Within hours, repair trucks filled the parking lot. Tenants poked their heads out of windows, smiling for the first time in weeks. My phone buzzed with a text from my old roofing contractor. Bruce told us you're out. Are you out? I typed back, Harbor Oak Management is very much in business. The relief in Chelsea's voice when the heat kicked on made everything worth it. The diner booth felt like a war room. 3 contractors sat across from me, HV, roofing and plumbing, the backbone crew who'd helped build our empire. Roy, the HVAC guy, spoke first. Bruce owes us $18 grand, says he'll pay when he feels like it. I slid my Harbor Oak retainer agreement across the table. Weekly payments through escrow. No waiting, no excuses. I'm putting together a 90-day stabilization plan for the Riverside building, and I need reliable partners. The plumber, Rosa, smiled grimly. Same professional standards as before? Better. I'm not managing for family anymore. This is pure business. I opened my laptop and showed them the compliance schedule. Emergency repairs within 4 hours, planned maintenance on weekly cycles, all work documented for warranty tracking. They exchanged glances and nodded. Roy signed first, then Rosa, then Mike, the roofer. As they left, I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer friend, Benton Hayes. I need to file a UCC-1 financing statement, I said. Harbor Oak Management has outstanding management fees owed under our previous service agreement. How much? Benton asked. $12,000 in unpaid fees, plus interest. Time to protect my position before things get messy. The look of respect in the contractor's eyes told me they'd finally found someone who valued their work properly. Benton's office smelled like old leather and fresh coffee. He spread my documents across his desk like a surgeon laying out instruments. Bank statements, emails, receipts, photos, 10 years of evidence in neat manila folders. This is solid, he said, adjusting his glasses. Unjust enrichment, breach of implied contract, and fraud in the inducement. Your mother promised compensation for capital contributions and never delivered. I pointed to the highlighted sections. Every dollar is documented. Bank transfers, contractor receipts, even photos of me doing the work. We'll file les pendants against the 2 properties where your investments directly increased value, the lakefront duplex and the downtown fourplex. That'll cloud the titles immediately. My stomach fluttered. How long before they notice? The moment they try to refinance or sell. Benton smiled coldly. Property records are public. Title companies check for liens as standard practice. Within an hour, the paperwork was filed. 2 properties that Bruce thought he owned free and clear were now legally clouded. Any buyer, lender, or title company would see my claims and demand resolution before closing. My phone rang as we left the courthouse. Bruce's number. I let it go to voicemail, knowing his rage would only confirm we'd hit the right target. Bruce's voicemail was pure rage. What the hell did you do? The title company says there's a lien on the duplex. Call me back now. I didn't call back. Instead, I answered when Mum called an hour later, her voice sharp as broken glass. You're embarrassing the family. People are talking. We can settle this easily, I said, stirring honey into my tea. Transfer the 2 buildings I funded to Harbor Oak Management and pay my outstanding management fees. $12,000 plus interest. You're holding us hostage. I'm protecting my investments, the same way any business partner would. She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with an email from Enrique Clark at First National. Insurance certificates still expired on the Riverside property. Occupancy report overdue. Unless we receive complete compliance documentation by Friday at 5 p.m., we'll be forced to move forward with receiver appointment proceedings. I forwarded the email to Bruce with a simple message. Compliance deadline Friday. Harbor Oak Management stands ready to assist. Then I opened my laptop and got to work assembling the most thorough compliance packet in banking history. Every page would demonstrate exactly what professional property management looked like. 12 hours later, I was cross-eyed from staring at spreadsheets, but the compliance packet was perfect. 3 binders with color-coded tabs, current insurance certificates, tenant estoppel letters with notarized signatures, maintenance logs with photo documentation, and a complete rent roll with payment histories. I hand-delivered everything to Enrique Clark's office. He flipped through the first binder, then the second, his expression shifting from worried to impressed to amazed. This is incredible, he said. Most property managers give us half sheets with barely legible handwriting. This looks like a Fortune 500 filing. I sat down across from his desk. Harbor Oak Management doesn't do half measures. Your building is an asset, not just a loan number. Enrique closed the final binder and looked at me directly. Would you consider accepting formal appointment as receiver? For 60 days, just to stabilize operations and protect our collateral position? My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. What would that involve? Full management authority, change locks, collect rents, approve repairs, even evict problem tenants. Court supervised, but your decisions would be final within the scope of property operations. I pretended to consider it. I'd need weekly reporting to the court and monthly compensation at standard receivership rates. Done. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Bruce sat with a lawyer who looked like he'd been hired that morning. Mum refused to make eye contact. I sat with Benton, my evidence binders stacked like a fortress on the plaintiff's table. The judge was efficient and direct. Miss Hayes, your client is seeking receivership appointment. On what grounds? Your Honor, the respondents have violated multiple loan covenants, allowed insurance to lapse, and failed to maintain required occupancy levels. My client has the expertise and documentation to stabilize the property and protect the lender's interests. Bruce's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, this is a family dispute disguised as a business matter. Miss Michaela is simply unhappy with her inheritance. I watched the judge's expression shift as Benton presented our evidence. Bank transfers, management agreements, compliance violations, and photographic proof of deferred maintenance. When he showed the court my capital contribution spreadsheet, the judge's eyebrows rose. Receivership granted for 60 days, she announced. The court also orders a forensic accounting of all capital contributions to the disputed properties. Bruce's face went red. Mum finally looked at me, but I was already standing to leave. The sheriff's deputy was polite but firm as I changed the locks on the Riverside building. Bruce had tried to show up that morning, but the restraining order kept him at least 50 feet away. He stood across the street, shouting about family loyalty while I worked. I documented everything with photos and videos. Every broken fixture, every code violation, every deferred repair that had been ignored for months. Then I set up a trust account for rent collection and posted compliant notices in the lobby. The transformation was immediate. Maintenance trucks rolled up within hours. The elevator repair company arrived before lunch. By evening, the hallway lights were bright and steady for the first time in months. Tenants stopped me in the lobby with grateful smiles. Chelsea from the bakery brought me fresh coffee. You fixed the heat in 3 hours. Bruce promised to do it for 3 months. My phone buzzed with a notification from the local neighborhood blog. Receiver appointed after management lapses at Riverside Mixed Use. The comments were already pouring in, mostly from relieved tenants praising the sudden improvements. I smiled, saving screenshots for my court report. Bruce's desperation was showing. Text messages flooded my phone. You're destroying our family. Mum is having chest pains. This isn't what Dad would have wanted. When threats didn't work, he tried intimidation. He sent messages to my contractors, claiming I was fired and they should stop working immediately. Big mistake. Roy from HVAC forwarded me the text chain with a laughing emoji. I responded once, professionally. Interference with court-appointed receivership duties is contempt of court and may result in sanctions. Harbor Oak Management operates under judicial authority until further order. Bruce went quiet after that. But Chelsea from the bakery had another surprise for me. She handed me a manila folder with shaking hands. I found this in my lease file. Your mother gave it to me last year. Inside was a letter on family letterhead promising Chelsea free rent for 6 months in exchange for help with building improvements and occupancy reports. The letter was signed by Mum and dated during the loan compliance crisis. I photographed every page and sent copies to Benton. Free rent promises that violated loan covenants and tenant rights. Another nail in their legal coffin. Benton read the free rent letter with the grim satisfaction of a prosecutor finding a smoking gun. This is unenforceable and potentially fraudulent. Your mother promised something she couldn't deliver legally and created occupancy reporting violations. Can we use it in court? Absolutely. It shows a pattern of mismanagement and covenant violations that predates your receivership. He leaned back in his chair. Michaela, they're going to try to settle soon. Be ready. That afternoon, my phone rang with an unknown number. Ms. Michaela, this is Karina Cannon from Second National Bank. We hold the note on the lakefront duplex. Can we meet? My stomach tightened. The list pendants was forcing conversations I hadn't expected. Of course. When and where? At 2 p.m.? We're concerned about the title cloud and want to understand the situation before we make any decisions about the loan. I spent the evening preparing a presentation that would make clear exactly who had been managing that duplex for the past 4 years and who had the expertise to keep it profitable. The empire was starting to crumble, piece by piece. Karina Cannon's office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. She was direct and professional, cutting straight to the point. The lis pendens filing has flagged our loan for immediate review. We need to understand the claims before we proceed with any collection actions. I opened my Harbor Oak presentation folder. I managed the lakefront duplex for 4 years. Increased occupancy from 60% to 98%. Raised rents by 30% through targeted improvements, and maintained compliance with all loan covenants. She flipped through my documentation. Before and after photos, rent roll comparisons, maintenance schedules, tenant satisfaction surveys. This is impressive work. What's your current role? Court-appointed receiver on another property in the portfolio. I'm also pursuing claims for unpaid management fees and unreimbursed capital contributions. Karina made notes on a legal pad. Would you be willing to provide monthly compliance reports if we hold off on default proceedings? Our primary concern is protecting the asset value. Harbor Oak Management can provide weekly reports if needed. Full transparency, documented procedures, professional standards. She smiled for the first time. I'll recommend we postpone any collection action pending resolution of your family's legal issues. That evening, Mom texted, "Come to dinner Sunday. We'll fix this as a family." Sunday dinner felt like a hostage negotiation. Mom had cooked my favorite meal, pot roast with Yorkshire pudding, but the kitchen was tense with unspoken accusations. Bruce arrived late, wearing a new watch that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "You're overreacting about all of this," Mom said, not looking up from her plate. "I'm prepared to offer you a monthly stipend if you drop the legal filings. Say, $500? I set down my fork and pulled out a flash drive. This contains documentation of $127,000 in capital contributions I made over 10 years, plus $18,000 in unpaid management fees. Bruce laughed. Actually laughed. "You think you deserve that much? For what, changing light bulbs?" I slid the flash drive across the table. Bank transfers, contractor receipts, photos of me doing the work. Every dollar documented and dated. Plus Mom's email promising to settle up after refinancing. The room went quiet except for the kitchen clock ticking. Mom picked up the flash drive like it might explode. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "Transfer the 2 buildings I funded to Harbor Oak Management. Pay my outstanding fees. Release me from personal guarantees on loans I didn't benefit from." Bruce stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against linoleum. "This is insane. I'm not giving you anything. Then we'll let the court decide." Their social media offensive was pathetic. Bruce posted a sepia-toned photo of our family at the groundbreaking of the first property, captioned with something about legacy and passing the torch. Mom shared it with crying face emojis. The comments didn't go their way. Current tenants responded with praise for the new management at Riverside. Finally, someone who answers emergency calls. Chelsea wrote, "Heat fixed in hours, not months." My Harbor Oak Management email was filling with resumes from vendors who wanted to work with a company that paid on time. Property managers from other firms reached out, wanting to network. Word was spreading that I ran a professional operation. But the real bombshell came Tuesday morning. Benton forwarded me an email from the court. The forensic accountant requests all personal banking records, including Venmo and Zelle transactions, from Karina Sullivan for the period of 2019-2024. I called him immediately. "What does this mean?" "It means they're tracking every dollar, including cash transactions and digital payments. If your mother moved money around to avoid paying you back, they'll find it." My hands were shaking when I hung up. The numbers don't lie, and soon everyone would see exactly how much I'd contributed to building their empire. The forensic accounting report was devastating. 27 pages of financial analysis that confirmed every dollar I'd claimed and found discrepancies I hadn't even noticed. Capital contributions, $127,341.18. Management fees owed, $18,750. Misapplied security deposits, $3,200. The report flagged covenant violations that predated the will by 18 months. Insurance lapses, occupancy drops, and deferred maintenance issues that showed a pattern of mismanagement. I breathed deeply, for the first time in weeks. Every sleepless night, every spreadsheet session, every carefully saved receipt had been worth it. The numbers didn't care about family politics or hurt feelings. They just showed the truth. Benton called that afternoon. The judge wants a settlement conference. She's also hinting at sanctions for continued non-compliance with receivership orders. What kind of sanctions? Fines, attorney fees, possibly contempt citations. Your mother and brother are in real trouble if they don't start cooperating. That evening, I sat on the front porch of the Maple Street house, looking at the peeling paint and cracked sidewalk. Soon this wouldn't be an insult anymore. It would be my headquarters. The settlement conference was held in a windowless room that smelled like stale coffee and desperation. Everyone sat around a scarred conference table while the mediator laid out ground rules. Bruce's lawyer started with an offer: $50,000 to release all claims and walk away. I didn't even blink. Transfer of the lakefront duplex and downtown fourplex, payment of all outstanding management fees, and release from personal guarantees on loans I didn't authorize. That's ridiculous, Bruce exploded. Those properties are worth $400,000, which I helped increase through $127,000 in improvements, I replied calmly. The mediator looked at the forensic report. The accounting supports Ms. Michaela's capital contribution claims. Are you prepared to make a counteroffer? Hours crawled by. They offered money. I demanded property. They claimed family hardship. I presented bank records and contractor receipts. Finally, Enrique Clark from First National spoke up. For what it's worth, we'd prefer Ms. Michaela's management to continued compliance violations. She stabilized our problem property in 2 weeks. The room fell silent. Even the bank preferred me to them. Between court dates, I threw myself into renovating the Maple Street house, sistering sagging joists, patching roof holes, replacing windows that hadn't opened in decades. The physical work felt like therapy after months of legal battles. Neighbors brought coffee and offered encouragement. Mrs. Quinn from next door mentioned a city grant program for small-scale rehabilitation projects. They're trying to encourage infill development in older neighborhoods. That night, I submitted an application with before and after photos, renovation plans, and a detailed budget. Harbor Oak Management qualified as a small business, and the project fit their criteria perfectly. 2 days later, the city emailed back. My project qualified for a facade improvement grant and expedited permit processing. There was just one requirement: host a community open house to demonstrate neighborhood engagement. Perfect, I said to the empty house. Let everyone see what determination and hard work can accomplish. I started planning immediately. This would be more than just an open house. It would be a showcase of everything I'd learned about property management and community building. The open house was scheduled for Saturday afternoon. I spent the week preparing presentation boards showing the transformation. Rotting siding replaced with fresh cedar, broken windows swapped for energy-efficient double-pane units, collapsed front steps rebuilt with proper footings. A small crowd gathered on the front lawn. Neighbors, city officials, local contractors, and a reporter from the community newspaper who'd heard about the woman rebuilding her neighborhood one property at a time. This is what real property management looks like, I told the reporter, pointing to detailed before and after photos. Not just collecting rent, but building communities. I've been doing this work for 10 years, mostly behind the scenes. The reporter took notes eagerly. What's next for Harbor Oak Management? Sustainable growth, professional standards, and proving that you don't need to inherit success, you can earn it. The article went live that evening with the headline, "Local Woman Turns Inherited Shack into Symbol of Self-Made Success." The comments were overwhelmingly positive, but the best response came from Enrique Clark. Saw the article. Congratulations on the great press. Looking forward to tomorrow's hearing. On the courthouse steps, Mum grabbed my arm with trembling fingers. Take the money, Michaela. Don't shame us in front of everyone. Bruce stood behind her, that smirk finally gone from his face. 3 months of legal pressure had worn them down. The forensic accounting, the list pendants, the failed social media campaign, nothing had worked. Last offer, I said quietly. Deed me the duplex and fourplex, wire my fees to Harbor Oak's account, sign mutual non-disparagement agreements. We all move forward professionally. The silence stretched long enough for a siren to wail in the distance. And if we don't? Bruce asked. Then the judge reviews the forensic report, rules on sanctions, and decides how much you owe in legal fees and damages. Benton's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and showed me an email notification. The judge has filed a draft order. She's not waiting for us to agree. Mum's shoulders sagged. What do we have to sign? Just the truth, I said. That I earned what I'm claiming. Inside the courtroom, the judge was brisk and businesslike. She'd reviewed all evidence, considered all arguments, and reached her conclusions. The court adopts the forensic accountant's findings in their entirety, she announced. Miss Michaela's capital contributions are validated and documented. The list pendants filings are justified and will remain in effect pending property transfer. Bruce shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Furthermore, the court approves the consent decree, transferring the lakefront duplex and downtown fourplex to Harbor Oak Management, LLC. Outstanding management fees in the amount of $18,750 will be paid within 30 days. She looked directly at Bruce. The court also finds evidence of willful covenant violations and interference with court-appointed receivership duties. Mr. Bruce Sullivan is hereby reprimanded and ordered to comply with all future court orders. I signed the transfer documents with steady hands. 10 years of work, finally recognized and rewarded. Outside the courthouse, my phone buzzed with a text from the city. Maple Street Rehabilitation Grant approved. Small business revolving credit line also available for Harbor Oak expansion projects. 6 months later, I stood on the roof of the Riverside mixed-use building, clipboard in hand, scheduling the elevator modernization I'd been pushing for since 2019. Sunset painted the city gold, and tenants waved from their windows as they headed home from work. A kid pointed at the newly repaired Harbor Oak Management sign, asking his mom what it meant. She explained that it meant someone cared about keeping their building nice. I posted a photo on Harbor Oak's Instagram, not of champagne or luxury, but of work boots on a rooftop and keys in calloused hands. The caption read, "Success isn't inherited. It's earned through boundaries, agreements, and keeping what you build." The lakefront duplex was fully renovated and 96% occupied. The fourplex had a waiting list. 2 new property owners had hired Harbor Oak after watching me turn chaos into stability without burning bridges or destroying relationships. As I drove back to Maple Street, my headquarters now, not my consolation prize, I thought about that first night sleeping on an air mattress, listening to raccoons in the rafters. Tomorrow, I'd be onboarding those 2 new buildings. Properties owned by people who'd watched me prove that competence beats connections, that documentation trumps drama, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply being better at the job than anyone expected. The old shack was now the foundation of something much bigger.